and welcome back to our series of interviews with Euros members around the world. It is a great pleasure to see Anna Kavelj again. I'm so pleased to see you. We started off our interviews with Anna. Oh gosh, it seems like weeks ago, and it seems like only yesterday. Time is doing this very strange elastic thing. Anna is with Elite Woodhams Relocation in Australia, and my first question to you is, what is happening right now in Australia?
In Australia now, everybody is celebrating their newfound freedom as the government a week ago set out its three-stage plan for being COVID safe, and so the different states are able to roll it out as they see fit. And so New South Wales today, it was groups of 5 in your home, 10 outside, bars and cafes and restaurants open, as long as they can stick to social distancing. And I think it's only 10 in a restaurant or a bar. So for many people, it won't be viable, but everybody's basically celebrating that, some relaxation. And some in New South Wales, the schools have principally gone back. And in Victoria, it will be, I think, the 27th of May, and then Queensland. So they're sort of, every state's doing their own thing, but it's starting to relax.
That's amazing. I mean, I know that, from what I've been reading, and also my sister-in-law is in Australia, in the Blue Mountains, actually, near you. And, she is back at work in hospitality. And that must be, the response from the government in Australia was very swift, and the way that the virus progressed was extremely well contained, wasn't it?
Yes, very. We have only just, I think today, ticked over 7,000 cases in the whole country, and not 100 deaths. I think 90 something deaths. So really shutting the borders and having mandated returning Australian citizens or permanent residents that do come back to Australia, they must not only quarantine for 14 days, but do so in a government mandated hotel paid for by the government. And so that's really, because they didn't do that initially, they just said quarantine for 14 days, but they clearly couldn't control that. And so now everyone must go to a government hotel, sponsored hotel, as it were. And that really sort of put the dampener on everything. So globally speaking, we have been unbelievably lucky and really seriously well handled. And then each state, we also have quarantining between quite a few of the states still. So even domestic travel is not on the cards. It's starting to relax. I think this weekend they said in Queensland you can go 150k. If you live in the outback, you can go 500k, because we have to remember what a massive country this is. So it's starting to improve. But I mean, honestly, by other standards, we've been incredibly lucky.
It's been incredibly well handled. I mean, I've got to say, and I think that's something that's so interesting. With the people that I've been talking to. I was talking with Maria Kuri yesterday, who's in Greece, and again, their response was very similar to the one in Australia, and the outcomes were the same. Very low numbers of infections, very low numbers of deaths. It's very impressive. But yeah, like you say, when you suddenly start to think about domestic travel and the size of Australia, that raises challenges.
Yes. So we have some winter school holidays coming up in July. And I think they're looking at that as being really the start of when boosting the local tourism, domestic tourism, trying to kickstart the economy that way. So, whether or not we'll be skiing, I don't think so, but at least we might be able to go camping and, go to other places, certainly intrastate and hopefully interstate, but I'm not sure about that yet. They're being very, keeping their cards pretty close to their chest in terms of dates. Yeah, it's quite fluid at this stage.
Well, I mean, it makes an enormous amount of sense. And again, it's interesting. And do people, when I was talking with Priscilla Montana in the US, and they were saying that, the differing approaches state by state has been quite confusing, and people have been, I mean, how are people feeling in Australia about, how this is working out?
I think on the whole, principally the politics has been taken out of it, which has been really wonderful. The states and the federal government have worked together to pull all the different policy levers that they are at their disposal, and there was a little bit of, not tension, but variance, because we have a Conservative government and a Labour government in Victoria. So then Labour sort of deciding, no, we're going to do it on our own terms. But on the whole, nothing like what I have understood it to be, how politicised it's become in the States. So in that respect, it's been quite good. Yeah.
I mean, that's so key. And again, I was on a call yesterday, and I was talking with Susanna Bourne in Spain and Michelle Bramstoft in Denmark. Two countries had the polar opposite approaches.
Yeah.
To each other, and they said the same thing, that politics, the fact that in Denmark, like in Australia, politicians on the whole work together to pull those policy levers in the same direction. In Spain, completely different.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of chat in the press about can this kind of leadership continue, this kind of politics and just doing what needs to be done. Long may it last, I think is what we're all feeling.
It's really interesting, because again, this is going way back. So when I studied law, you have these two different approaches to politics and law. You have consensus driven, and you have, I can't think of the word, when you fight against each other. So in the UK, we've got a fighting parliament. It is the job of each party to disprove.
Bipartisan. Yeah.
So different.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, at the same time, I think inevitably you get to, I don't know how many weeks we are, 7 weeks or whatever this has been now, and there are certainly itchy feet, and people are getting a little bit fed up with having their freedoms curtailed, which isn't great. We live in a very free sort of democratic society, and so, but on the whole, I think people are understanding that they're doing their bit for Australia. It's being a good Australian is to do your bit. So I think the only thing is that now that they start to relax it, they're very concerned about containing it, and everyone's still managing to understand to do the right thing. There's a worry about confusion, like, does that mean I can do that or I can't do that? So that's what they have to work through at the moment. But we also have rolled out an app in Australia, which they're hoping to get really high uptake on, to clamp down on clusters as and when they occur. So yeah, hopefully that will have some effect as well.
And is that ready and up and running at the moment, or is it just about that really?
No, it's about 2 or 3 weeks ago it was implemented. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, they're talking about doing that here, and they're running a test in the Isle of Wight to see whether it certainly. What's so interesting about that? I mean, you just referenced the fact that we live in free democratic societies where we're not used to having our freedoms curtailed, and an app like that in itself is actually a very powerful governmental tracking mechanism. But I think we're all willing to give up that freedom for a while, right? Just to have this security.
Yes, and then there was obviously the uptake has not been 100%, not anywhere near it, and I don't think it's at the level that they want it to be at, because a lot of people are fairly hesitant to do so, for freedom of privacy and all that sort of stuff. But I understand that they've done a really big push to try and allay everyone's fears in the capabilities of the data that it does collect and all that sort of stuff. I did it. I'm a good citizen, but
I would certainly do it. And certainly what they're saying here is that they need an uptake of around 65% to make it truly effective. We're doing some intercultural research on how governments have handled this and how populations have responded, primarily to be able to put that back to to our members, to say it's going to be interesting. When you open up, you have somebody coming in from a high impact country like the UK, like Italy, to a low impact country like Australia, and whether that is going to be a challenge for you as providers, trying to balance how they're going to respond. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so I think on the one hand, Australia, New Zealand, other such countries are probably looking quite attractive and safe, and attractive for many reasons. The only slight problem that we have, certainly being in the relocation industry, is that the borders are shut. They're literally shut, and you have to get approval even to leave. So even for me, if I needed to go back to the UK, I have to get approval from the government to leave, and they're even denying that on compassionate grounds, which, so it's really quite draconian in that sense, because they just don't want to take the risk. And also because those hotels that they're putting people up is currently at their cost, they don't want to be paying for people flying around the world. And the discussion around when the international border will be opened up is not even, they say not in the foreseeable future. And I am really quite concerned that that might mean 2021. I wouldn't put it past them, because I think they're just so, you know, we're an island that's at the other end of the world, and we're quite okay over here. And I think opening up the borders is a scary prospect at this stage. Yeah.
I mean, certainly as policymakers, I can see, you know, I can see that, but I guess, I don't know, this is so interesting because obviously from the point of view of our industry, it's very key. And we just launched this research project this week to mimic what was done in the UK by a group of independent DSPs, to get the figures that show, you know, how, I mean, in an economy like Australia, which is inevitably tied to your trading region, I mean, to continue the economy on a domestic basis is going to be very difficult. Yeah, and that's, so I read a thing in Canada, British Columbia, the government of British Columbia had said they will not be allowing gatherings of more than 50 people until one of three things has happened. Herd immunity has reached, an effective vaccine or an effective treatment. So they're basically saying pretty well what you're saying, which is not in the foreseeable future unless something changes soon. So that again is coming from a very low impact country. I think we might find in high impact areas, you know, the horse is out of the gate. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And therefore, you know, it's with great sadness that we look at countries like the US and the UK, where really the numbers are unfathomable for us. I mean, we just can't possibly relate to that. And we think, oh my goodness, we're under very tight restrictions given the numbers, and the US is opening up and the UK. But we're also thinking, well, we kind of hope it works because you can be the test case. And if your opening up works, then we can roll it out over here. So that's what we have to hope for.
It's just, I mean, it is very scary. I mean, talking with our members in Sweden, where they have gone down the herd immunity route, and you know, this is going to play out over the next couple of months. I think we're gonna know a lot more. So tell me, I mean, I know apart from anything else, you merged right before.
Yeah.
How's that been?
So I try to live my life fairly optimistically, and I have to say the one silver lining of COVID-19 has been that because we've been quiet, we've been able to get an awful lot done with regards to the merger, so that when we come through this, we're going to be in tip-top first-class condition of a merged business that knows exactly what we're doing. I have never worked so hard in my life, actually. Merging two businesses is seriously hard work. I was talking to Jennifer from IPR in the States, and she said maybe it's like childbirth. At the time, you'll say never again. Then in a couple of years, you'll be like, yeah, maybe.
You know. Yeah.
So I think, you know, you get a certain amount. The due diligence has to be done. The cultural fit has to be right. The shareholders' agreements have to be signed. You know, all that sort of stuff happens, and you think, okay, great, now we can go live and we can have the press release. But the amount of work that has to happen after that is just incredible. But it's been really great, and actually, I'm going to. It's really exciting to mold and cherry pick the best of both businesses and create an entity that you're really excited about. It's really good. It's going to be great once we get through this bit.
I mean, it's like you said before we started the recording, in a way, it's unfathomable how to have done this without having, you know, a couple of months of not having to work.
And I think now I have full sympathy for, you know, much larger companies like RMCs when they merge and things like that, and it takes years for the implementation to happen. And as a small DSP, I was like, well, what's the big deal? now I fully understand.
And how have your teams coped with all of that? I mean, because have you got a lot of people on furlough? How's that going?
So we are fortunate enough to be the recipient of a really generous government job keepers subsidy, they've put it, when you can demonstrate that your company's revenue has dropped by 30% as a result of COVID-19, they are paying $1,500 a fortnight for staff to keep them on, and that's in place until September. There's slight rumblings, but whether they will change the criteria or do something. At the moment, they're saying they won't, but it's certainly an extremely costly exercise for the government. So that's enabled me to have the team principally working and on reduced hours in some cases, but at least they're working and they're really actually productive and genuinely helping to forge this business. So I think, well, I hope, I'm really proud of them, and I think they're enjoying it. And everybody's, you know, really adapted to working from home. Obviously, the homeschooling side of things is seriously challenging, but I think once the kids go back to school, working from home is not so bad. And I think that's going to be the case around the world. You know, really, do we need commercial office space as much as we all thought we did? I'm not sure. We'll be watching this space, I think.
Yeah, you raised a really important point. Now, I've got two little comments there. One, Bryony is you know, our operations director. She's working from home and homeschooling her kids, and she said, "I thought a conference was hard work. This is really hard work." But yeah, I mean, I must admit, I would not like to have, you know, my investment portfolio in commercial property right now. We've decided to do away with the office. It will save us a lot of money. It's a way to, you know, like I said to you in the last interview, it's a way to kind of put contingency funding in place and all that kind of stuff. So,
oh, of course. I mean, you know, cash is king at the moment, so we have to do what we can to stay afloat. And if people at the moment you can go into your office in some states if you need to, and so I may have occasionally escaped to go to the office. But yeah, I think on the whole, when we can go back, a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't need that extra commute time, really, to be honest. I'll just be more productive at home. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
it's amazing, isn't it? Because again, it really, even I think I said to you before, even 2 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been able to do this. We didn't have Zoom. We didn't have, you know, cloud-based solutions. We were still working on a fixed server, which we could remotely access, which was a pain in the neck, you know, so it wasn't possible. And now we're all realizing it is.
I know, it's brilliant.
So you're not really hearing anything. The government is saying, we don't know when borders will open. They're just kind of pushing that away at the minute.
Yeah, they really don't want to even go there. Oh, you may have heard, I don't know if it made the international press, but they were talking about a trans-Tasman bubble. So opening up between New Zealand and Australia,
Okay.
And having just that, and then potentially saying, okay, Australia and Canada, you know, other safe jurisdictions. So that's so Jacinda Ardern has joined some of the cabinet discussions here, and it's not like phase 1 or 2, it's phase 3. But that if we get to phase 3 in say July, then that may be something, and that will actually be good for many reasons. Yeah, tourism, but also relocations and just general, you know, vibrancy of the economy. So that's one approach.
That is so interesting, because I mean, when you extrapolate that out, we're talking about whole new trade agreements and cooperation between countries. That's fascinating, really.
Yeah, so we'll see. And then in regards to you know, opening up the borders from a relocation perspective, I think the 2-week quarantine will stay in place. I don't think the government will pay for it, but it will stay in place for a long time, and therefore tourism is really out, which is such a shame because Australia relies so much on tourism.
Yeah.
But I think they will start to approve work visas, but surreptitiously on a case-by-case basis. So the floodgates are not open, but if you're critical to industry, you might get in, kind of thing, and they'll do it like that on slowly, rather than make some big press announcement, I think.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because I mean, I don't know whether you know, but here I was having a conversation with Martina Sharvai, our quality manager, and her daughter came to help with the conference in Munich last year. And I was just saying, how is Clarissa? And she said, oh, she's back in London. I was like, what? Yeah. She was studying at King's College, and she came back to Frankfurt when lockdown happened. And then 2 weeks ago, she booked a commercial Lufthansa flight, went to the airport in Frankfurt, got on it, landed at Heathrow, got the tube, went back to her flat.
Wow.
I know. We were kind of, we sort of assumed that wasn't happening. And then I talked to Peggy Love this week, and her daughter's au pair was able to fly back to Frankfurt from JFK. So, this, I know, commercial flights.
Okay.
Only now, I think Boris Johnson said last week that we may do the 14-day quarantine for people coming into the UK. We haven't been doing it up until now.
Wow.
So, I know, right? It's totally.
I mean, each to their own, but I think we did that in March. Yeah, must have been March that got implemented. And now that seems like the norm. And to hear of, students traveling, Europe, I'm just like, what? That seems so alien.
I was so surprised. And then I just started looking at airline schedules, and sure enough, yeah, there are, obviously they're massively reduced, and Lufthansa are being very good about, distancing people on the planes, and the fares are very high as a result. But yeah, they're happening. So that was pretty interesting. So tell me, you were saying about the government schemes have been really generous in Australia, and it looks as if you're able to do that now until September, until the early autumn.
Yep. So that's till September, and then we just see where we are.
Well, we will catch up again in the summer and find out. But I must admit, when you said that about the Tasman bubble, the kind of the Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, I'm quite jealous about that, because that's so nice, and both.
I think so. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we do something like that. We're far enough away from everywhere. That's, I think, the beauty of being at the other end of the world. Is that you're sort of so far removed. I mean, I can't possibly imagine that happening in Europe. It's just impossible. Everything's so interlinked. But and also, what's really funny is that, I think I wouldn't be the only DSP that's getting an inordinate amount of RFPs and all that sort of stuff at the moment, which is also keeping me very busy. But we're having a lot of interest in the Pacific, which is just so funny, because I think it's one place that seems to be relatively untouched, and it's a place where businesses can get on and actually do some stuff. And so, whether it's Fiji or Samoa or Papua New Guinea, or I'm really surprised by it, but everyone's got to do something. And if I hear that word pivot one more time, but everyone seems to be pivoting to doing something new, and I think we'll get through it. I'm really I am very positive, and I've really loved. I just also want to say thank you to all the stuff that you guys have been doing, because it's been so wonderful to bring the community together in as much as we can virtually, and to feel connected. And I'm so heartened. Initially, I would say a month ago, I was seriously worried about our industry and the people in it, but actually in the communications I've been having and chats and stuff, I genuinely think the vast majority of us are going to be fine.
I agree, and I think it's we are a very resilient group of people, but also as I've been sort of talking to people, and we've been working with our community, the innovative nature of the people like yourself, this is a struggle, and this is why we wanted to do the research project, because if aviation is being phased in, especially somewhere like Europe, gradually. Or not, as we were just discussing, just get on a plane. If there is the kind of like the case to say, critical people, growing the economy, we need these moves need to happen. These people are really important to regrowth. Then we will see the trickle of work begin. But yeah, we are a great community, and the members of Euro are amazing, and we'll do our very best to keep everyone connected. But thank you for saying that. That's really nice.
You're doing an amazing job. It's great. It's really fabulous.
And anybody watching this, yourself, if you think of something we can be doing, please tell us, because again, we're doing a lot of internal restructuring, we're doing a lot of research, we're doing a lot of kind of planning, but we've got great resources in our consultants, and if we can do something of use, then tell us.
Yeah. Perfect.
It's really lovely to see you. I'm so glad to hear you sounding positive, and it's funny. I'll just say this: there's a treadmill behind there, and in the morning I go on it. And this morning, and I found all these virtual runs, and I was running down the river in Melbourne and across and back.
Oh.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's just,
You'll be glad to know that the beaches are back open again, so
oh,
everything's okay.
and are people behaving? Are people, you know, respecting the social distancing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So you know that things must be getting back to normal if the
When
beaches
the
are open
beaches,
again.
exactly. Very culturally relevant. It's great to see you. Let's catch up again in a month, 6 weeks, and find out where we are then.
Perfect.
But in the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and enjoy the autumn. You're in the autumn now, going into winter.
Yes, it's freezing into the
Is it
winter.
really?
Yeah, it's freezing.
Wrap up. Don't go to the beach.
Thank you
Lovely.
so much, Dom.
Take care. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.